user. Let's go. So I was just gonna remind you about the record.
Thank you. So remember when we did absolute value graphs?
Because we have the PSAT.
So some people have it in the morning, some people have it in the afternoon. Okay, so then you'll miss the quiz. It's just, it won't be hard to grade. Yeah, it'll be,
You go.
no, of course not, I wouldn't do that. So back to absolute value graphs. How do I know this is an absolute value graph? What tells me that?
There are lines.
That's right. These symbols here are absolute value symbols, here and here. And so what is my vertex for that absolute value graph? Nice. I agree with the -4. -1, -4. So this 2 out here doesn't have anything to do with the vertex. It's got a bit. I know that was last chapter. Not even this chapter that we're in. So we always took the opposite of what's inside here. So remember the y value, this is the y value, so the y is on this side and this is on the other side. So y is equal to -4. But the x plus 1 is on the same side, so we can set it equal to 0, and we would get a -1 for our x values. Just a reminder.
Where did you get that? Did you get that from number 1?
No, I'm just making it up. I'm doing some review of absolute value, because we're going to use that information to find the vertex today. So you're going to use that same information to find the vertex when it is in vertex form for a quadratic. So this number 1 here, somebody want to take a guess as to what the vertex would be? 2, positive 2, 4. Questions on that? Because if you don't get the vertex right, then the whole thing is all jumbled. And you have a problem if you don't get the vertex right. So remember, you always take the opposite of this value inside the parentheses. Is -2 becomes +2. And then this here is your y value of your vertex. That number here is your y value. That's your y. That's your x. So my x, let's go ahead and draft the point. 2, 4. And it is a quadratic. So this is called vertex form here that it's in. So I already have my vertex. I don't have to compute it. So my axis of symmetry, again, because it's a quadratic, y equals, is going to be this vertical line here. What is the equation for that axis of symmetry?
2,
X is equal to 2. Good. So now to find another point, we're going to make a table. And we're going to put our vertex in that table, and we're going to pick a number, just like we did before, close to 2. What's the number that's close to 2?
0.
0. 1 is also close to 2. 3 is also close to 2. Any of those would be fine. So now we're going to substitute it back into our equation to find our y value. So we have 0 minus 2 squared plus 4. Let's put the 0 in place of this x here. So what do we do first to simplify that? Do we do parentheses? Do we do square? Do we do... Order of operation says we do what's in the parentheses first. So 0 minus 2 is -2. So we're going to take -2 and square it. And then add 4. What's -2 squared? Negative 2 quantity squared. 4 plus 4, which is 8. So we have, for this point, 0, 8. 0, 8. Let me move this over. So now again, we use that axis of symmetry, and we've got our axis of symmetry. We've got a number that is 1, 2 to the left of that line, so we go 1, 2 to the right. Reflect it over that line. So there's our graph. The domain is going to be negative infinity to positive infinity. Questions on that? Questions on the domain? Okay. And then what about the range?
4, positive infinity.
Yeah, so our lowest value is a 4, and then it goes up because the range is the y values. So it's 4 comma infinity. Bracket on the 4 or parentheses on the 4?
Bracket.
Bracket. The 4.
Yes.
Okay, so number 2. What's our vertex on number 2? Positive 5, negative 6. So take the opposite of what's inside the parentheses. And the y value is the negative 6. So we graph that point. 5, negative 6. So now our axis of symmetry, because it's y equals, is going to be a vertical line that goes through this point. So that axis of symmetry is what? Good question. We don't use the 3 for the vertex, no. We use it to find our other points, but it does not affect the vertex at all when it's in that vertex form. Yeah, good question. So what's my axis of symmetry? Just 5 or x equals 5. So don't forget that. It is a line. So 5, negative 6 is here. This line here is our axis of symmetry. 5 is just a number. X equals 5 is the equation of a line. Okay, so we want to graph it. So we're going to make a table. We have a 5, negative 6. So we want to pick a number close to 5.
4 minus 5.
4, or I'm going to pick 6 just because that would give me a positive number. 4 is perfectly fine. I just want to avoid that negative. So I get y equals 3 times 6 minus 5 squared minus 6. So what do we do next? Trying to get rid of that. Right there. I can't get rid of that box. I'm not sure how to do that. So what would I do first? What I do inside the parentheses? Would I do the square? Would I do the times? What do I do first?
Side, please.
The parentheses. So 6 minus 5 is 1. So 3 times 1 squared minus 6. And then what do you do next? Exponent or multiplication? Exponent. So 1 squared is 3. So this is 3 times 1 minus 6, or 3 minus 6, which is negative 3. So 6 negative 3. And then how do we find our next point? Yes, Iris. So we're going to reflect it over that axis of symmetry. 1 to the right, so we're going to go 1 to the left. And then our graph. Let me draw it again. I had trouble doing that. Our graph looks like that. So what's my domain? Negative infinity to
Yeah, positive.
positive infinity. So these x values over here, they're going up, but at the same time they are going to the left, just slowly. And then to the right, they're going up, but at the same time they are going to the right. So what's my range on this one? David, what's my range? Good. So negative 6 is the low point, and then it goes up to infinity. Next one. Okay, so looking at that. Okay, so what's my vertex on this one? Allie, do you know what the vertex is?
Or negative.
Yep.
Value.
So negative 4, negative 1, and then our axis of symmetry goes vertical line through that point. So x equals negative 4. Yeah. Always. Yep. When it's in that, this is called vertex form. When it's in that vertex form, it'll always be the opposite. Yeah. Just like when it was the absolute value. Yeah. Good question. So we make a table. And our first point is negative 4, negative 1. So what's another good number to choose? So a number close to negative 4, what would be a number close to negative 4?
0. Or negative 3.
Negative 3.
0.
Negative 5 is close also. Either one is fine. So we have the negative in the front. Negative 3 plus 4 squared minus 1. So we do what's inside that parentheses first. Negative 3 plus 4 is? What's negative 3 plus 4? 1. Do we do the exponent next, or do we do the negative next? The exponent, so we square the 1, the negative comes last. So this would be negative 1 minus 1, or negative 2. Questions on that? Because that one is one where students often make mistakes. Okay, so -3, -2, and then we reflect that point over that axis of symmetry. One to the left, so we're going to go one to the right. One to the left, one to the right. And there's your graph. So, Apollo, what's the domain?
Infinity and negative infinity.
Which one comes first, the negative infinity or the infinity?
Negative infinity.
Yes. And then what would our range be, Hira?
It would be negative infinity, and then -1 with the.
Yes, good, with the bracket. So she went from the bottom up because the smaller values are down here. So those are the smaller values. So you start at negative infinity and then you go up to -1. Good job. Okay, last one, fraction, yippee. So what's our vertex? Jason, what would the vertex be?
-2.
Negative, what one? -3, 1, yep. And so my axis of symmetry is here, which is x equals -3. And so now I want to pick a number that is close to -3, 1. So this time I've got a fraction, and I would prefer to avoid a fractional answer. So anybody have any idea what might be a good number to put inside there for the x? 0. What's your thinking? Good.
Well, do 0, then you keep off the 3 and you then multiply it. Then you do the
Square.
square root, yeah, you get 9, right, and then probably
Good.
get 39.
Good. So she got an answer that was a multiple of 3. And so that will make you get rid of the fraction. So you don't have to do that. It's just nice to do that to get rid of the fraction. So we would have 1/3 times 0 plus 3 squared plus 1. This gives us 1/3 times 3 squared. And then the exponent comes next, right? 3 squared is 9. 9 is 9 over 1. 1/3 of 9 is 3. Plus 1, which is 4.
Whoa.
So how would we find our next point? We reflect that point over the axis of symmetry. So we have 1, 2, 3 to the right. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3 to the left. Okay, so you don't have to pick one that is a multiple of 3. It's just nice because then we don't have a decimal or a fraction to graph. So what's our domain here? Alina, do you know what the domain is? Good. Finally, do you know what the range is? So we want to look at our smallest y value because it's the y direction. And so what's your smallest y value there? And of 1, that's right. So it's going to start at 1 and then it's going to go up. Does that make sense? And so then what would come next to the 1? No. When we go up and it keeps going on forever. That's right, infinity. Let's see if I can do that better. So 1 to infinity. So let's just talk really quick. Suppose that you did not pick a number that was a multiple of 3. Suppose you picked instead -2.
I swear to God.
So hang on, I'm almost done. So we would get the negative 2 plus 3, which is 1. So 1/3 times 1 squared, or 1/3
Oh my.
plus 1. So on your calculator, how would you find 1/3? Some of you may know what it is. It's a decimal. Fantastic. If you don't, how would you find 1/3 on your calculator?
0.3.
Okay, so good. You know what that is. How, if you didn't know what it was, what would you do on your calculator? Put a 1 divided by 3. Remember, this symbol is division. So 1 divided by 3 and then plus 1. So that would be another way that you could find that. Doesn't matter which way you do that. Okay, can I get somebody to pass out the worksheet, please?
So this is it for that. I'd be the first one to go.
Thank you.